Okay, your experience, Art, would be a lot different coming on board. You came into an existing program that had been underway for 5, 6 years, something like that. But then you also taught not only drafting, but welding and then in CAD.
Right.
What kinds of things did you get into? What were your expectations, disappointments,
Okay.
rewarding kinds of things?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I came from Kalamazoo Public School System, which had a very large vocational area. Shops were very well prepared and lots of money back in it, because at that time it was a lot of vocational money. So when I came here, I was kind of very reluctant because, again, the labs here were not, there was nobody to supervise it, so therefore you go into the welding lab, there was no full-time person in charge. It was kind of like overran by part-timers. So it was a challenge to get the program up and running and credibility behind the program. And we did some very innovative things. For example, the very first Sunday college, we were challenged by Pete Rush, who was our dean at the time, to be innovative and come up with a course to offer in the Sunday college. So after thinking and giving it a thought, I decided to offer a course in welding sculpture. So my goal was to teach the principles of welding, both oxyacetylene and arc welding, all the safety precautions and all the procedures, and then the students would apply it to a design of their own.
Hey, that'd be a good idea for a CAP session course, wouldn't it, Paul?
Well, we did that Sunday college. And the funny thing about it, we were going to offer one course, but people had the option to sign up on that Sunday, the first day. And sure enough, over 40 persons signed up. So we offered 2 sections. So what we would do is we would start off in the lab, and then at the end of the lab, the last hour, we'd have both groups together as far as our lecture was concerned. And then we would split up again, the people would go home and the other person would go into the lab. So it's very innovative. So that was one of the things. Another thing too is we got involved with computers. About 1980, we bought our first desktop computers, similar to the ones that we're using today. At that time, we bought 5 black and white computers, 5 color computers, for a total of $27,000 each. A lot of money. 5 years later, we sold those at an auction here on campus for $50 a piece, just to keep from throwing them in the dumpster. That was how fast the technology was moving at that time. And so we were very excited, and again, like I said, our students really were on the cutting edge as far as technology with those desktop computers. So the challenges were to kind of phase out so much with the manual drawing to get on the computers and so forth. And it was a challenge, but it was very rewarding because, like I say, those students now that I still have contact with are CEOs of some companies and own companies, and it really made a difference in the manufacturing in Kalamazoo area.
Well, you've both been here quite a long time, and when you came in '68, Fred, did you have any notion that this was going to be a career and you'd be here 30-some years, and you are, you've been here 28
years, yeah.
Did you have any idea, or did you maybe see this as a stepping stone? And you've been here so long, why? What was there about the experience, the place, the people, whatever, that kept you here? And talk to me about those kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah, I like teaching, and I enjoyed teaching high school. And because I was teaching part-time at the community college in Muskegon, I realized that higher level and older students are a lot more fun to teach. And so I looked for a community college job. And then in Kalamazoo Valley, at that time, a lot of community colleges were opening up. Southwestern opened up, and Glen Oaks opened up, and several other ones. And I applied to Kalamazoo and was fortunate enough to get the job, and this will be my 33rd year at KVCC, and I love it. I love teaching, I love students, and I I love KVCC. It's an ideal place to work. The facilities are great, and the administration is great. We have a great faculty and great student body. And to me, it's the ideal job, is being a community college teacher. And if I were ever to come back again, I'd like to be a community college teacher.
Well, you know, with my background, again, I came from industry. My first teaching assignment was for industry, and what I was teaching was geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, which is an international language for flatness, parallelism, perpendicularity, and so forth. That was my first teaching experience. And I started to think, I said, now, wait a minute. I'm teaching engineers because they have no idea of what the concept is. I'm teaching these guys. They're making more money than I am because they don't have a bachelor's degree. So that was my goal, was to come back and get a bachelor's degree. But then I enjoyed teaching. My goal basically was to do training for industry with a corporation like the General Motors or whatever. And so that's what I first started out doing. I hired in through the Portage Public School System, but I taught at General Motors, this geometric dimensional and tolerancing. So then I went to work for the Kalamazoo Public Schools, and I could very well have stayed there. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy working with young people. But back in the 60s, I got involved with drag racing, professional drag racing, and now I have a 3-car team. And one of the things that were so exciting to these kids was, hey, here's a teacher that drag races. He's pretty cool, you know. So I kind of developed a rapport with the students, and even today, with the drag race cars, I take those cars all over the state of Michigan. I put on seminars how we use academics, math, physics, reading, writing, all on the race car and at the racetrack. And so when I do these kids look at me and they say, whoa, nobody ever told us that math was involved in racing. So I point out that math is universal. It's a universal language, no matter what you do. In some way, you're going to be involved with mathematics. So we use these race cars as a means of getting to interact with young people. So over the summer, I was out at Prairie Lake Camp for 4 different sessions, 4 different weeks with the race car and talking to these young people. So I could very well teach at an elementary level. It wouldn't make me any difference. I love kids. I love young people. I love the adult students. So to teach is just the perfect solution. I can blend my hobby with my teaching and then share with other people.
Art and I went to the Trends Conference in Traverse City, and he was going to be a speaker there, and he was going to give his presentation about his race car there to a bunch of community college teachers from Michigan. And so I went with him. We roomed together. We're good buddies. We always go to the Trends Conference and have a good time there in Traverse City. And so I went to a session with him and sat down, and he got up and he says, I would like to introduce the person that's going to introduce me. And he says, Fred Toxopeus, and then he went on and told him that I was his high school teacher, and he tells everybody that. He tells
Everybody.
He tells the waitress, did you know this guy's my high school teacher? And the waitress says, oh, is that right? He says, boy, he must be an old guy. And she says, do I really care? But anyhow, he asked me to put me on the spot. Then I had to get up and introduce Art to this group of instructors there, but that was no problem. And he did pretty good presentation.
Yeah. So right now I go all over the country. But when I go over the country, I take a slideshow. And when I go to California, I make contact with the school system. I don't care who it is. I've never been rejected at no cost to any school system. And I go in and I talk for an hour, interact with the kids, and I'm out of there.
He writes it off on his income tax.
That's true too. Because again, it's
See the world and write it off your taxes.
That's
yeah,
right.
Why not?
because again, it's volunteer work, and I get letters from all over the country, young people saying, "Hey, I remember you coming to our school, and it's just great."
Well, maybe we can wrap this up with some highlights, memories, stories, anything come to mind?
Oh, I'd like to say, when we started in '68, we were a real close-knit group, and we did lots of things together. Now we have such a large faculty, and they're spread all over, and very diverse. And but back then, we were a close-knit group, and like I said earlier, we were all young. We had lots of things going. We had a basketball team. We had no gymnasium back then, but we had a basketball team that we were in the city league. Several of us faculty members, and then we had a bowling team.
Softball.
We had co-ed softball, and I've got several trophies in my office from past years of winning the city league in co-ed softball. At one time, we had 2 co-ed softball teams. We used to take trips to Detroit and watch Detroit Lions, the Detroit Pistons, and then back then we used to have parties at my house on Crooked Lake at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, the faculty, the staff, the administrators would all come over to our house and enjoy the lake and enjoy the fellowship. And we used to have faculty picnics, and we were a close-knit group. But as we get larger and larger and more diverse, that suffers.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other stories?
Oh, I can tell you some stories, but you shouldn't record them. Bicycle
We
trips.
don't want to have to bleep you.
Bicycle trips. That was another learning experience. For about 8 years, went on the spring bicycle trip down to Florida.
Yeah,
And-
Paul Milliken's the one that
Right, Paul
organized
and
that. Paul and Phil Wilson, right?
Yeah. So I went along as a cook and mechanic, and we had some stories we could tell you. But one head guest in Moulton, Alabama, stranded there for 24 hours, and cooking on an outdoor cook stove.
And
just having a
didn't
great
one time you and Bill Trush were walking down the road out west, and someone said some racial slur?
No, that was Daryl Salisbury.
Daryl Salisbury and that hippie guy,
Right.
the hippie guy, Bill Trush.
That was in Moab, Utah.
Well, okay, you know more about it than I do.
That's a redneck town.
Yeah.
Back out there 3 years ago, and it's still a redneck.
But yeah, I had a lot of great fun, and still I see running those people all over, and hey, remember when we went to Florida on the bike trip?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great.
That's
times.
what's nice about teaching, is because you live in Kalamazoo, and a lot of your former students are still in Kalamazoo, and no matter where you go, they say, "Oh, you're Fred Toxopeus. I had you for math."
Right.
And then, of course, you probably don't recognize them because you've had hundreds and hundreds of students. Some of them you do, and oh, that's right, I remember you, and it's really nice.
Yeah. You got on a plane, and you were telling a story. You got on a plane and sat next to this little gal. She says, "Did you get BCC?" And she said, "Yeah." So Art Parker, he's my instructor. She was headed out to Arizona.
That's right.
someplace,
Yeah, sure.
So ran into him in the airports, stores, all over.
Yeah.
But a lot of great times.
All right.
Well,
Thank
Paul,
you very much.
we appreciate you doing this.
Appreciate
Yeah.
you coming in for this.
Okay.
I know you missed a really vital session.
Yeah. Why don't you come back with us, Paul?
Yeah, you didn't realize that, did you, Paul?
I didn't know it. I went to Social Security to see. We're ready.
All right.
Here we go.
Now we got to get serious.
I thought college was serious.
Have, Pat Baker, Bob Badra, and Johnny Wilhite. I'm going to start on my left with Pat and come across. And Pat, I'd like you, first of all, to talk to us, tell us about your pre-KVCC experience, training, background, what brought you here as well.
I see, all right. I was a student at Ball State University, majoring in English, and taught high school for a year and a half in Indiana. Went back and did my master's at Ball State again, and taught high school for another year, and at a different school. It was not a positive experience. And so I thought I could do just about anything besides teach high school, because I was burned out at a young age. And a friend of mine who had been in graduate school with me at Ball State was from Kalamazoo, and he called and said, "Gee, they're opening a community college, brand new community college in Kalamazoo. You ought to apply here. You'd like community college." And so I thought, well, I could do that. And I applied, and there I was, and here I am.
Good. Bob, what about your background and training experience?
Well, I've got a rather strange background, but maybe we don't have to go that far back. I don't know how far back you want me to go.
Beginning.
My educational background, besides my schooling, my first job as a teacher was teaching 6th grade at Harrison Park Elementary in Grand Rapids. And frankly, that was the longest year of my life. And after that, I took a leave of absence from the school system in Grand Rapids to go to Western Michigan to get a master's in English. And it was while I was getting that master's that the community college became a possibility here. And the folks in Grand Rapids sent me a letter saying that they were willing to put me in high school to teach Latin. Why they said that, I don't know. Must be something to do with my educational background. And the day that I got the letter from Grand Rapids saying that they would offer me so much to teach Latin, I got a letter from Dr. Dale B. Lake saying that he wanted me here for much less money to teach English. And frankly, I wanted to be here. And I had to decline Grand Rapids, more money or not, and the rest for that is history. I've been here ever since, and I've loved every minute.
And Johnny, your background, what brought you here?
My background begins earlier than theirs. My background begins back in Durant, Mississippi. Well, I think it's important. Most people don't even know that I was born in Durant, Mississippi. I spent the first 10 years of my life there. And I feel I got an excellent education in segregated schools from some very dedicated teachers. And they really set me on my way and gave me confidence to do just about anything I wanted to do in education. I moved to Michigan City, Indiana, because that's where my mother had moved, and finished there, high school there. And then because I had a friend who came to Western Michigan University, I visited one weekend, fell in love with it, and ended up pursuing English and French at Western. I got the undergraduate and the master's degree in French there, and went back to Michigan City, Indiana, and taught a year at Purdue North Central. Indiana has campuses around the state for their universities, and then got engaged and got married. And my husband at that time was teaching at Western Michigan University. So I came here looking for a position. Kalamazoo Valley Community College was interviewing to open up a new college. And I secured that position, was doing practically the same thing that I had been doing at Purdue, and by the way, got the same salary. I would have gotten an increase at Purdue, but $7,500 that what I was earning at Purdue, which is a good salary back then, I was offered that to come to KVCC, and I thought, oh great, I got a job, and I won't lose any money. I didn't know about inflation at the time, and was just happy to be in a school that allowed me to choose my own textbook, set up the program the way I just had 1 year's teaching experience, so I was glad that I could draw on that to set up another program the exact same way, because I didn't know another way to do it. And we progressed a lot since then.
Well, you were all part of the English department and faculty initially, and came from very different backgrounds and experience. Arrived to find that a department chairman had come up with course descriptions and said, here, go teach. And no syllabus existed, no course outline.
That's right.
As a group here, I don't care who goes first, what kind of shock was there that? What kind of frustrations, problems, but at the same time, what kind of fulfillment and rewards came out of being creators?
I found it wonderful. It was great that I couldn't make a mistake because no matter what I did, it was all right. I knew the mistakes and corrected them over time, but it was great to have the freedom to make them and have no one there to say you can't make those mistakes, so here's how you prevent them. It was a great learning experience.
I think there's a lot more sharing then
Mhm.
because we were all sort of thrown in together without, much direction, and so we had a textbook. So we shared a lot of assignments with each other, a lot of ideas and strategies, etc. And of course, because we were all pretty much in the same faculty offices, there were 3 big rooms, remember?
That's right.
And our desks were right next to each other. That was the office.
And
So-
all disciplines.
all disciplines, yes. And so it was easy if you had a question, grading a paper, planning an
Yeah.
assignment, just to roll your chair over to the next desk or to find somebody in English and say, what about this? And so
Yeah.
it was more of a camaraderie, I think, probably.
And when they had me teaching philosophy, I could turn to the automotive technician and say, what's analysis?
And in foreign languages, I became an instant department chair because I was the only person teaching. So, no, there was a lot of freedom in that, in being able to set things up the way you wanted them. If you didn't like something, you could bring it before the college. I remember languages were 3 credit hours, and I thought that they should be 4. My background had been with 4, and the university that is our neighbor had it at 4, and I did up a syllabus. They said, well, just present it before at our next meeting, and we all met. We didn't have department meetings. We all met in one big
Yeah.
meeting. I made my presentation, and the whole faculty approved it. That was quite satisfying.
A lot of courses were prepared and actually accepted that way.
Uh-huh.
Right.
It was wonderful.
Well, we all knew what each other was doing that way, and
Right.
Sure.
no surprises, and and things were a lot simpler. The process was a
Oh,
lot
were
simpler.
they ever?
Well, and Bob, you moved from English into humanities and philosophy.
Yeah, almost instantly.
And tell me about that. And
Well, I can't remember his name, the first chair of humanities. Anybody remember his name? Oh, well,
Was Dean
it
Ross?
no.
No,
It was
Ross
be-
wasn't the first?
It was before him.
Well, then it was,
Was it Adams?
Yeah.
Yes,
It was
okay.
Adams.
yes.
He was looking at my resume and noticed I had degrees in philosophy and said, well, we haven't got a philosophy teacher, so you stop teaching English now and start teaching philosophy. Now, that was a challenge and a half because I didn't expect that. I had just been primed at Western for English, but I took it because I like the world of ideas, and it was challenging, and I'm glad I made that switch. I have to tell you, though, about something that has to do with Pete Rush. Is this too soon to throw in Pete Rush?
no. Throw Pete right
During-
into the mix there.
During that early time, I was teaching creative writing, and 3 or 4 of the ladies in my class didn't like the way I was teaching it, and sent a letter to Pete signed by them saying he shouldn't be teaching. And Pete, I mean, this would never happen anymore, but Pete comes to me with this letter, signatures and all, and says, here, deal with it. That's all he said. And there was no further ado with it, and I just kept teaching the way I was. And fortunately or unfortunately, these ladies figured out what I was doing, liked it, got through the course, and came back and took 3 or 4 more courses from me. But that's the way it used to be back then.
That was then, this is now.
Yeah.
Johnny, I've, from a distance, always admired your efforts in behalf of foreign languages.
Thank you.
Because you were alone, which had its advantages, but I'm sure there were other times when trying to keep that program afloat was a real struggle, and I wonder if you could address that.
Yeah.
Because you moved from English and really concentrated on that. That couldn't happen overnight because there just weren't enough students taking language at the time.
No, it did not happen overnight. I was originally hired to do half and half, to do half English, half French. And it was half and half for just a couple of years. And then the universities decided that they weren't going to have a requirement for languages anymore, and we had a low enrollment as it was. You can imagine, with just a couple of classes. I was doing the French, and there were 2 classes of that, and just 2 classes of Spanish done by a part-timer. And then we I lost one of the French classes. I ended up teaching 3 English and 1 French class, or 4 English and 1 French class. And I decided, well, my goodness, I've got my master's in the wrong area. I'd better get back into school. So I went back, got the English master's, and then things turned around again, and languages started. We have made quite an improvement in a lot of areas that would, I think, allow students to be even just a little more excited about the languages outside of the requirements, outside of the general ed requirements that are now really the norm for most 4-year schools. Back in the 80s, I was looking at some figures because I was amazed at our figures for this semester already, and we haven't even gotten started. But back in the 80s, we were happy, just really overjoyed if we had 300 students for the whole year, okay? And now, already signed up, and we haven't even finished. We've got just under 400 for this semester. Now, back a few years ago, it was still, even with the rising numbers, it was still just me as a full-timer and several part-timers. And that was rough because I was trying to mentor them, keep the program viable, and include them in the decisions of the choosing textbooks and making changes in teaching strategies and things like that, because things have evolved a lot in teaching strategies, learning strategies for foreign languages since we all took ours in high school and college. But fortunately, I got involved in a program that was sponsored by NEH and AACC that allowed us to totally revamp our language program to make it much more feasible for a student to really be able to learn a language in a couple of years. With that, and one of the recommendations they made was that we have another full-time teacher to have a really good program. And fortunately, with the help of my colleagues again, a little bit of effort was put forth by the administration to come up with another full-timer for us. And this person is such a versatile person that we've been able to add to our basic offerings of French and Spanish. We are now offering German and Russian, first and second year. They're going really, really well. We are so pleased. And we think we're turning out a really good product because it's the influence of international studies. Our involvement with that has brought us quite a few international studies students, and we try to make sure that the cultural element is at the basis of our teaching. It's really, really quite a nice program that we're running now.
Great. A lot of satisfaction there, isn't it?
A lot of satisfaction.
Good. In the early days, one of the words that we heard a lot was innovation, and always wanting us to try something new. And the college was always good about supporting that if we did come up with something. But still, I know all of you have had some experience with some special programs, innovations, trips, team teachings, whatever. And again, maybe one at a time, I could hear from you about those kinds of things.
Oh, go ahead.
Talk about the team teaching one. A great success.
Well, I've had some positive and negative experiences team teaching. The first experience I had was when 3 of us team taught American literature and African American literature. And that was Bill Lay and myself and Norris Johnson. And and that was interesting. That taught me that you really need to have similar philosophies of teaching to
Yes.
actually make this work.
Yes.
All of us were very qualified and knew our subject matter well, but just little things about how do you deal with students, how do you plan, can you rely on each other, do you have similar methodologies, etc. So that. It was fun, but it was frustrating, and it wouldn't have made me a real advocate of team teaching. And then my second experience was when we had an American Studies program, and we decided we would take a core of courses and put them together and have the same students in all courses. They would take the same courses taught by the same people, and as much as possible, the 4 instructors involved would try to go to each other's classes, which was interesting and fun, and